American and European leaders are conducting a campaign of deception against their own populations and against the whole world, throwing sand in the eyes of the people to lower the anger that is coming out from everyone to stop this genocide and barbarism that's being conducted by Israel in Gaza. However, that is primarily to support Israel as a whole. That doesn't mean that Netanyahu won't have more concessions and won't reach a ceasefire in the short coming period. There's still a very big opportunity. That's something that will happen at some point. In this video, we're going to talk about the latest statements that came from American and European leaders recently, especially with more plans from European countries to drop aid in Gaza, with more threats coming against Benjamin Netanyahu now internally, with the recent cabinet meeting discussing the future of the situation inside of the Gaza Strip. We're going to talk about all of this alongside very important updates that came up in the past 24 hours. Let's begin with this report here. Donald Trump met Keir Starmer in Scotland. During their meeting, they were discussing various topics, and of course, Gaza was one of them. Keir Starmer was showing discontent and dissatisfaction all of a sudden from the genocide, despite the fact that he legitimized the genocide before it began by saying Israel has a right to cut off oil, food, and water off a civilian population. Go back to his statements at the time. And Donald Trump also did not rule out that the fact is there's real starvation inside of the Gaza Strip, acknowledging the fact that there is starvation in Gaza. What's happening exactly? Every day or two, we're having different statements from these leaders. What is their real intention here, and what are they striving really to do? Well, if you have been observing everything for the past 2 years, and more than that, you can clearly see that what the American and European leaders have been doing all along is only buy Israel more and more time. They have been legitimizing Israel's campaign since the beginning. They have been actively supporting Israel in its campaign since the beginning. And they have been facilitating this support, taking part in the crimes that Israel is conducting inside of the Gaza Strip and delegitimizing the Palestinian resistance. But now there are talks about the summit in New York led by France and Saudi Arabia to talk about a two-state solution. Even the British Prime Minister is talking about a two-state solution, but that Hamas shouldn't play a part in this country in the future. And Macron is saying any Palestinian state needs to be demilitarized. What they're doing is saving and protecting Israel for as long as possible. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to protect Benjamin Netanyahu in an indefinite war inside of the Gaza Strip, although they might have financial interests and gains that might come afterwards, especially with the gas fields off the shores of the Gaza Strip that are estimated to be over 100 trillion cubic meters. A lot of gas, a lot at stake. And many countries would be interested in playing a part in what's going to happen next at the expense of the Palestinian people. This is coming with more criticism now from figures in the American administration as well in relation to the Gaza situation. For example, J.D. Vance is all of a sudden worried about the deaths. Lamenting children are clearly starving to death. Vance saying Israel must do more to get aid into Gaza. No, you need to do more to stop supporting Israel and helping it conduct a genocide. That's what you need to do, and have some self-reflection. It's as if some of these leaders expect everyone to be blind to their own crimes. They think that people are blind to what the United States does, to what the UK does, and to what other European countries do in their constant support for Israel. And we're talking about direct support, action to support. There's a difference between that and criticizing countries that do not take action to prevent. There's a very big difference, especially when we talk about the state of the Arab establishment surrounding Israel. No, with the United States and many European countries, the establishments are outright supporting. And again, even with his statement, like the statements of Starmer and Trump, they mix the poison with it too. He's saying that, oh, Hamas should also be fought so that they can stop stealing the aid. Listen to that, stealing the aid. Although Israel just killed more people, aid workers, trying to protect the aid that's coming inside of the Gaza Strip. Look at this here. 10 aid workers martyred in Israeli attack in western Gaza. The families, because Israel is preventing the civilian authorities inside of the Gaza Strip under the everlasting Hamas excuse from securing the aid, they disabled the functioning of the UNRWA and other aid organizations. Hell, they killed many aid workers, including European and Western aid workers inside of the Gaza Strip, without any outrage or uproar, by the way, whether it's from Britain or the United States. If they kill American or British citizens, if nothing happens. But now the people there are trying to secure the aid so that the gangs that Israel supports in Gaza don't loot the aid and go and resell it or sell it at extortionate prices to the population. Israel saw them trying to secure the aid, going back so that they can distribute it to the people, and they targeted them. Why? Because they want chaos. This directly debunks this statement that I just told you about J.D. Vance saying that we need to fight Hamas so that they can stop stealing the aid. As if Hamas steals any or have ever stolen any aid. All of the aid that went in was going to independent organizations. And the main organizations, by the way, are led by the United Nations. The UNRWA was the main organization that deals with aid, and they were distributing through all of their centers. They had protection from the authorities, of course, but they were the ones who were protecting all of the aid and storing it in their depots, in their distribution centers, so they can later on spread it to the population in their warehouses as well. Now, too, Spain is saying that they're going to drop aid inside of the Gaza Strip. The UK is saying they might participate too. Other European countries in coordination with Jordan. Spain is saying we're going to send 400 Spanish soldiers to Jordan so they can go and drop aid to the Gaza Strip. However, they're recognizing that it's not going to be anything significant. The Prime Minister said that what's happening in Gaza is a stain on all humanity, and that this operation to drop aid is not gonna do much. It's gonna offer minimal relief, and what needs to happen is a proper solution. However, they're still not addressing the key problem, which is the Israeli capability and Israel being able to have a siege, impose a siege on a civilian population. That's what needs to be eliminated. What needs to be eliminated is any future Israeli role, at least in the 1967 territories in the West Bank and inside of the Gaza Strip. If you are sincere and if you are genuine when you talk about this two-state solution. And we all know what they mean, by the way, when they talk about a two-state solution, because there's only one solution, and that is one democratic state between the Jordan River to the sea, with equal rights for everyone, regardless of their background. But you're talking about a two-state solution. If you are talking about a two-state solution, you need to make sure that the Israeli entity doesn't have control over these territories that are supposed to be totally sovereign. Unless, again, you are not sincere in anything that you're saying, and you want this chaos to continue. As a continuation from the Balfour Declaration up to when the United States started to be the main patron and main supporter of Israel, and supporting its havoc and chaos and all of the crimes that they are committing. So we have evidence on the ground that is debunking what these leaders are saying. They're clearly not genuine what they're talking about. They're trying to protect Israel and prolong the Israeli existence. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to protect Benjamin Netanyahu himself, because Netanyahu is making certain moves that are really angering members of the coalition now, who are threatening to resign yet again. And we will get to that in a second. But before that, it's not only the evidence on the ground that is debunking the Israeli and American lies, it's American organizations directly. The CIA. US government review found no evidence of widespread Hamas theft of Gaza aid. The CIA is debunking J.D. Vance directly. These people make fools out of themselves. Like when Donald Trump was talking about Iran having a nuclear bomb, and the CIA went out and told them Iran doesn't have nuclear bombs. Your main, biggest intelligence organization inside of the United States. And J.D. Vance saying there's theft, the CIA is telling them there is no proof of Hamas theft. At the end of the day, there are American mercenaries in Gaza, aren't there? They see exactly what's happening. And they participate in some of the crimes. But some of them who have an ounce of integrity, who revealed the conduct of the GHF, especially in Gaza, are saying that there is no problem in people stealing the aid, apart from those who Israel supports. Now, we spoke about how the American and Western establishments are trying to protect Israel and give it legitimacy in what it does in general, but not necessarily as a blank check for Benjamin Netanyahu to have a complete and open war indefinitely, because some of their statements go against that. What is Netanyahu doing, and what has Netanyahu done recently that proves that this whole situation that's happening now is likely to change again? He is changing the equation again. Benjamin Netanyahu had a very important statement. And in that statement, he said the number one risk now is not Hamas. Of course, we want to continue the war. We want to eliminate Hamas and return the Israeli prisoners of war. But that's not the main thing. The main thing now, the main task that we have at hand, is to make sure that Iran does not have capabilities to have nuclear missiles and strategic ballistic missiles. In those words. Meaning, he's trying to legitimize the potential of reaching more de-escalation with Gaza, either a temporary ceasefire or a permanent ceasefire, by saying we need to focus on what we've done in Iran. Hamas is becoming a secondary arena, and this is the main front, another article stated. He's saying Iran is more important now. We need to focus on what they're doing, but we're still going to focus on Hamas and getting the Israeli prisoners of war back. The people inside of his cabinet are realizing that Netanyahu is up to no good. At the end of the day, he previously betrayed many of his allies, and current allies have been backstabbed by Netanyahu multiple times. He's having meetings that do not include key figures like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, who are the main figures that challenge him in everything to do with Gaza. They constantly want him to escalate and increase and starve the people. Smotrich himself said, we want to starve 2 million, but the world won't allow us. He said that around a year ago, just over a year ago or so. And now he is having another meeting to discuss the situation inside of the Gaza Strip and the potential of having a ceasefire, but they're keeping the details to a very, very small number. Minimal details are coming out in relation to this meeting. Why? Because there's a very big likelihood that they might go to a deal that will put the whole coalition at risk of total collapse. And now one of the key elements in his government, Bezalel Smotrich, or at least a member of his political party, Religious Zionism, Orit Struk, is saying that actually we can withdraw from the government, we will withdraw from the government if the Israeli Prime Minister does not show us a vision on how to win inside of the Gaza Strip, not in months or years, but in days. And she's giving a maximum of weeks. She made this statement: without an immediate victory in Gaza, we have nothing to do in the government. We are determined that this is the time to bring about victory. According to her, without a decision within days, we see no point in the existence of a right-wing government. Now, these people, it was their career dream to form a right-wing government in Israel, especially the most extreme right-wing government in Israel, to go all out and to prove their theory of only force and more force will bring security to Israel, and only by having this racist, supremacist approach with total brutality, a blank check to murder and slaughter and destroy, will we be safe on our land, as they say, the land that they stole. But according to her, if Benjamin Netanyahu will not provide a vision to achieve this victory, if he's not going to come with immediate steps to show them how they're going to win inside of Gaza, that would make him a person with left-leaning policies, not a real right-winger. Therefore, we would have nothing to do inside of the Israeli government. This means that Netanyahu is clearly planning something that they don't like. And even if they do decide to withdraw and resign, the government will not collapse, because the Israeli Knesset is on a 3-month break. It will be resuming in October. So no one's going to do anything now. If they're going to withdraw from the government, they're going to lose their positions. They're not going to take down the government as a whole because it's on a break. And also, the opposition gave Benjamin Netanyahu a safety net that, from his perspective, would be good enough to allow him to reach the beginning of 2026 when he wants to have early elections. Because there's almost now a consensus inside of Israel that there will be no elections on time next year, which is due to take place in October 2026, and that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to have an early election. And now he's trying to get all of the momentum, trying to gather all of what he calls the accomplishments so that he can boost his popularity even further and increase the chances of him getting another term. That is, unless he manages to get a deal with the state, because don't forget, Netanyahu is in a really bad health. His situation isn't great. He's been hospitalized multiple times in the past few years. Cancer, heart problems. Man is ill. He's not doing well, and he's only getting older. He's on his way out. If he protects himself, if he receives reassurances and guarantees that he won't fall to the Israeli courts and he won't be imprisoned, he will get a pardoning or a plea deal, something of the sort, that might be a reason for him to get out of politics. Because part of the deals that he asked Donald Trump to make with him inside of Israel, especially with the court cases that he's facing now, one of the reports said that it included the potential of Benjamin Netanyahu leaving politics altogether, if he wants a plea deal or if he wants to be granted amnesty or have any sort of deal that will get him out and won't put him in prison. So there are very important developments here, and there are potentials. There is a big potential for something to happen in the next few days. Again, nothing is for sure, nothing is for certain, but that is the situation. In the meantime, and despite the fact that Israel said that it's decreasing its activities inside of the Gaza Strip with 10-hour humanitarian pauses, or what they call humanitarian pauses, every single day in multiple parts of the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian resistance isn't backing down and isn't stopping the constant attacks on the genocide forces in Gaza. So in the past 24 hours, they released this video of the Palestinian resistance fighters targeting the Israeli soldiers in Khan Yunis. That was on the 26th of July, on Saturday. Khan Yunis, where Israel buried, and this is the actual video, its own APCs after the Palestinians targeted them. 3 APCs that were targeting them, that were targeted by the Palestinian resistance, one of them with an explosive device that a Palestinian fighter would have to go directly and plant or put into the APC, and some of them with a Yasin 105 RPG that is a symbol now, and that's a nightmare for Israel and the genocide forces inside of the Gaza Strip. And the Palestinian resistance, again, monitoring all of the actions. These are the cameras of the Palestinian resistance, monitoring the exact movement of the genocide vehicles inside of the Gaza Strip. And this was one of the attacks where one of the Palestinian fighters will hold an explosive device and go and plant it in an APC. Have a look at this. This is not the first time, and this is where the bulldozers of Israel start to bury the APCs. And the Palestinian resistance said that at the time they did not see them evacuating anyone unless that was missed. But they're literally, they had them targeted and then they buried them inside of the Gaza Strip and they did not take them out. Unless they were completely burnt again, like what happened before, and Netanyahu didn't want to face further scrutiny. So they said, we'll tell their families that, you know, all of them were totally fried and they'll give them back ashes or something. What we have seen now, by the way, when the Palestinian resistance fighter going there and planting this device, this is happening on a regular basis. This is a prime example of why Israel will never win and why the Palestinian resistance will never be beaten. Because these people are putting their life on the line directly when they're going to fight these genocidal maniacs. Plus, Israel, in what it calls the Gdon Chariots or Gdon's Chariots in this recent campaign, they put in all of the forces that they can put inside of the Gaza Strip with 5 divisions. They didn't disclose the numbers of the Israeli soldiers that went into Gaza within those 5 divisions, because in the initial days, the peak number reached over 80,000. Again, Israel never verifies, but you can only assume based on the estimation of the size of each division. The division is the largest unit in an army. Then you have the brigade, and then, the smaller units that come. But Israel had 5 divisions. They declared that they withdrew 2 brigades from Khan Yunis not long ago as part of Division 98. But all in all, in Gdon's Chariots, they were planning to have an all-out military campaign just to finish everything off militarily, so they don't have to talk with the Palestinian resistance and not have to have any sort of deal with the Palestinian resistance. So an attempt of the early days where they tried to use, full force. The only difference this time is that they had repeated intense attacks and the Palestinian resistance hardly suffered any casualties. And that's being confirmed by Israel. The resigned Major General Itzhak Briki had a podcast the other day in which he stated that the Palestinian resistance fighters are not losing any of their personnel. As a matter of fact, they reached the initial numbers that they were in, and they grew even more. There's a likelihood that they grew even more because they're conducting a guerrilla warfare against Israel. And guerrilla warfare defeated the United States in Vietnam, and it defeated the Soviets and the Americans in Afghanistan. Just in these examples, and there are many other examples too. Therefore, Israel would never be able to win a guerrilla warfare against the Palestinian resistance. Now, key elements within the military establishment know that very well. That's why they've been constantly advising Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal, especially the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir. Although he was under a lot of pressure to try and get something out of this campaign that the political echelon led by Netanyahu is imposing on him, and his ministers bossing him around. Like Smotrich and Ben Gvir in cabinet meetings were always digging and always saying negative words to him. You know, you're a failure, you're not failing, you're not achieving your objectives, you're not doing as you're told, you're incapable. Like what they've done with the previous IDF Chief of Staff. Yet despite that, he has shown many times that we need to reach a ceasefire, because he was the first person to go head on with Benjamin Netanyahu by saying that the priority is to get back the Israeli prisoners of war rather than defeat the Hamas. Whereas Netanyahu always stated, our priority is to defeat Hamas and then bring the Israeli prisoners of war, only for Netanyahu later on to take a step back. So now that the Israeli Knesset is on a break, we have these humanitarian pauses. No aid that's going into the Gaza Strip is sufficient enough, so don't be fooled by that. And don't be fooled by the whitewashing attempts of European establishments trying to protect themselves first and foremost, and then Israel, and hide their shameful complicity and participation in the genocide. But despite all of that, there are certain moves that are leading Benjamin Netanyahu to concede. Israel already confirmed that they're having concessions. Whether it's in the ceasefire, whether it's inside of Gaza, everything is clear to everyone who's monitoring the situation. Therefore, that would put the American administration and the European establishments that support Israel in a position where they will still be supporting Israel, because they don't have a problem with the concept of a supremacist ethno-state. Forget about all of the talk of democracy and human rights. They support an ethno-state, an apartheid entity built, formed, and continues to survive through genocide and terrorism and ethnic cleansing. They don't have a problem with that. But what they do want is for Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal, to have a de-escalation, and preserve this ethno-state for the future. So that no sort of revival would happen, no sort of people-led movement would happen, any real democratic change or freedom and equality between the Jordan River to the sea happens in that area, because that would hurt their geopolitical interests in the region. They don't want any country there to be a country that is independent, representing the people. No, they would rather have an ethno-state and dictatorships in the region. That's why they constantly support them. With that, with every hour, in the past couple of days especially, there are new moves that are coming that are showing that there is indeed a movement there in relation to the attempts to de-escalate, Netanyahu's concessions, the fact that people are upset with him in the Israeli cabinet, and the fact that Israel is declaring these humanitarian pauses and allowing aid in, no matter how little, without any return. Hamas isn't conceding with anything, by the way. Hamas showing leniency and flexibility. but they haven't given Israel anything in return to what they're doing now. Therefore, that shows you that there would be a potential, and the latest events and the events that will unfold in the next 48 to 72 hours will also give us more clear indications on the following weeks and whether there would be a genuine potential for a temporary deal to take place, or if it will continue down the same path of more escalation and things going out of control to maybe higher levels than ever before.